Test. All right, good morning. I'll convene the Board of Finance, Arkansas State Board of Finance. We have a quorum. I want to welcome everybody to DFA's building, our new conference room. The technology is awesome, but can be daunting. And so thank y'all for learning how it all works and stuff. So we'll be meeting here, I think, on most occasions going forward, although we may bounce back occasionally to Secretary Fiskin's offices. So first thing on the agenda will be consideration of adoption of the minutes from the January 29th, 2026 meeting. Are there any edits, questions, comments about the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. So moved. There's a second, and there's a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The minutes are adopted. And with that, I'll pass it over to Treasurer John Thurston for his presentation.
All right. Thank you, Secretary. Quarterly overview for the Treasurer's investment portfolio. The results remain within the board's approved benchmarks despite low short-term interest rates. For the last quarter, net income was approximately $98 million. For the first half of fiscal year 26, net income more than $197 million. So I'll hand it over to the team. I believe Stephen is, I'll take it from here.
If you could just activate your mic so we can make sure it gets them.
Okay. Thank you, Treasurer Thurston, Chairman Hudson, and board members. I'm Stephen Kilgore, Director of Investment Accounting. In sharing insights from the quarter, we begin with the trend in investment revenues on a month-by-month basis. So that's the second slide in your presentation. The most recent month provided $27.4 million in long-term revenue and $5.1 million from short-term investments for a total of $32.5 million for the month, as compared to $30.6 million from the previous month. While earnings in the short-term segment have declined, long-term investments have provided a more consistent yield. The next slide shown the division of income for the quarter on a more granular basis. Net income as a grand total was $98 million. Income received on a cash receipted basis also totaled $98 million. Mortgage-backed security coupon receipts as a total provided the largest share of these receipts at $51.5 million. Corporate bonds and other government bonds were also important. Next slide shows how your dollar of investment is divided into categories. We've got mortgage and loan-backed securities at being close to 56% of the total. Governmental bonds were 18%, short-term investments were 15%, and medium to long-term corporate bonds were approximately 15%. These allocations are similar to the previous quarter end. The next slide shows details of portfolio returns quarter by quarter The first few columns are the prior fiscal year, then the last two, this current fiscal year. Quarterly net investment income remained stable throughout fiscal year 2025. In the most recent quarter, it totaled $97.98 million as compared to $99.2 million in the prior quarter, primarily because short-term interest rates declined. Net transfers out rose from $14.7 million in the first quarter to $250 million in the most recent quarter. Over the last 12 months, the total return measured on a market value basis, with each income component evaluated against market value rather than book value, shows an interest income return of 3.72% and a price change return of 3.72%. Together, these components, that's in the middle section, produce a total return of 7.44% for these last 12 months. And looking again at fiscal year trends in the bottom section, net income rose from $37.4 million during the low interest rate COVID fiscal year of 2020 to 2021 to nearly $400 million last fiscal year. Midway through the current fiscal year, net income totals $197.2 million. The next slide has some groupings you might evaluate in comparison to our policy limitations. We've got the largest investment groupings by duration are for 1 year or less, and then between 3 and 6 years. Commercial paper instruments, which are short-term corporate borrowing instruments, were quarter end were within the limits of A2 Standard & Poor's and P2 for Moody's. Corporate bonds were within the approved limits of BBB and Baa2. Slide 7 shows a trend in various treasury bonds as compared to the Arkansas portfolio yield, that being in purple. So as Arkansas portfolio yields have tended to follow the trends for bonds in general as maturing bonds are replaced with current market yielding securities. Slide 8, the Treasury General portfolio is the primary investment aggregate under management and has a more long-term focus than the smaller pools shown. I'd now like to turn it over to investment managers Steve Pulley and Robert Romanek to discuss the portfolio and plans from a strategic perspective.
Thank you, Stephen. Mr. Chairman, board members, as you can see, we have another great quarter consistent results report. Just to piggyback off what Treasurer Thurston said, our returns were 3.43 for the quarter, then the range set forth of 3.4 to 3.5 from the previous quarter. The return generated almost $98 million for the quarter and over $197 million for the first half of the year. And if you remember, a year ago, we did over $200 million for the first half. So this is down about 2.3% year over year for the first half compared for fiscal year 25. The quarter ended with the Federal Reserve cutting short-term rates over 3 times for 75 basis points. These cuts will have an immediately reduce the earnings in our short-term portfolio and may place downward pressure on our overall returns if further rates are warranted in the future. The slide on the duration slide, not up there, but the very last slide that you have is illustrates the interest rate sensitivity of the portfolio. There we go. And the long-term portfolio, which indicates the portfolio profile is positioned to preserve principal and income through shifting market rate cycles. The total size of the portfolio remained at $11.4 billion. The book value, the overall book value, just of the long-term portfolio is $9.7 billion, and it returned to $3.32, which sets the stage for a stable return for overall returns. Now, the short-term segment of the portfolio is $1.7 billion and earned $3.94. That's down previous quarter. Our money management trust fund, that's the investments for our state and local governments, carried a balance of $575 million and returned $405 for the quarter, and that once again was down from the previous quarter, which is consistent with the reduction in short-term rates we saw. So despite the uncertainty around interest rates, we continue to structure the bond portfolio to protect our income, manage reinvestment risk, and preserve the stability as market conditions evolve. With that, I'll answer any questions you may have about the portfolio.
Thank you, team. Any questions from the members of the board about the treasurer's report?
Chairman, I have a quick question. Thank you both. Steve, Steve. The about 80 million increase in transfers out for the last quarter. Anything you can share there in more detail? It went from year over year, I'm sorry, 176 in 2024 to 254 in 2025.
Okay. Let's see. There's a lot of variation based on when tax receipts arrive, and I think there were some significant outflows, but I don't have the detail on it.
Nothing comes to mind.
No.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if that could be just a function of the liquidity need for refunds. That would be our refund season. So, yeah.
That's no further questions. I'll turn it over to Robert Manning for the benchmark and also the macro overview.
Thanks, Stephen. Morning, Chair Hudson, Treasurer Thurston, and members of the board. With your consent, I will be setting the new target rate of book return for the third quarter of fiscal year 26. After voting to reduce short-term interest rates at their 3 previous policy meetings, Federal Reserve Committee members opted to hold the Fed funds rate steady when they met at their scheduled meeting on January 28th. This brings the cumulative reduction in short-term rates to 175 basis points, or 1.75%, and leaves the Fed funds target range at 3.5 to 3.75%. With the government shutdown now behind us, fundamental data reflects diminished downside risks to the labor market, which had been considered the decisive variable in the Fed's decision to cut rates. In his post-policy press statement, Fed Chair Powell suggested economic activity was expanding at a solid pace, the unemployment rate was showing signs of stabilization, and the risks between labor market growth and inflation appear to be balanced. With the underlying implication, the FOMC could be on hold instead of on pause. This view, however, is in stark opposition to the administration's very vocalized monetary policy preferences. And after a lengthy public search, President Trump nominated former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh to be the next Fed chair. As chair, we believe Warsh will make a concerted push to continue reducing short-term interest rates, at least in the near term. Currently, the forward interest rate curve conveys the probability of a prolonged pause, with the next interest rate cut occurring toward the second half of this year. While all these elements create a fair amount of uncertainty, we believe interest rates will remain attractive through our third quarter, supported by moderate economic tailwinds, which would create opportunities for the team to invest at higher long-term yields. We are therefore proposing to leave the target rate of book return unchanged for the January through March period, maintaining a third quarter range of 3.4 to 3.5%. Thank you, Chairman Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Romanek. Any questions for Mr. Romanek before we move to setting the book rate of return? Okay, with that, I need a motion to set the target rate of book return for Q3 of FY 2026, period January through March, maintaining a third quarter range of 3.40 to 3.50%. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
There's a second? A motion and a second to set the book rate of return at 3.4 to 3.50%. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion passes and the book rate of return is now established. I'll now turn to our quarterly motions. As chairman of the State Board of Finance, I make a motion to the board that no funds are available for deposit in the State Board of Finance Certificate of Deposit Program. Do I have a second to my motion? Second. Second to the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion is adopted. Moving on, as chairman of the State Board of Finance, I make a motion the board direct the Treasurer of State to purchase warrants for the succeeding quarter, January 1st, 2026 through March 31st, 2026, pursuant to Act 1088 of 2013, and to keep reasonable amounts in demand deposit accounts and money markets during the next quarter for the transaction of day-to-day activities of the state. Is there a second? Got a second to my motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion is adopted. And with that, we'll move to the EBD portion of the meeting. And Mr. Wallace, if you come join us at the table for your presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. The first item under the Employee Benefits Division section would be the formulary review for December, January, February, and then the medical for February. So we will get started with the December 2025 pharmacy review. Items 1 through 3. We are just removing a prior authorization requirement for the injectables related to migraine medications. As we have kind of done an analysis of that, the approval rate is 100%. So we might as well just ease that step a little bit. The next item, the capsule is going to be discontinued. And so we are just replacing that with the tablet formulation for that particular medication. The next 2 items, 5 and 6, we are looking at a quantity limit based on the FDA recommendations, as well as we're seeing some price erosion due to the generic formulation being out there. So making some changes along those lines as well on the tiering structure. Well, you'll see the same thing on item 7. We're making the change to prefer the generic tier due to the price erosion for this particular drug. Item 8 is a new to market, so we're waiting on more data to come out before we add that to formulary, so it will remain non-covered at this time. On the next page, items 9 and 10, the cancer guidelines are recommending changes for the adult and pediatric. We're keeping up with those changes and have found that these are effective treatments. So that's why we are going to roll them on as specialty tier with those particular criteria. Same thing for item 11. The next remaining from 12 through 17 are new to market that we are not covering at this time, either that we already cover the less costly alternative or the efficacy has not been established at this point in time. I'll pause there for December and be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Move on to January then.
All right, looking at January, you'll see these are new to market that we are continuing to keep it not covered. Either that the alternative is an over-the-counter for the last one, or that the efficacy is not met at this point either. Be glad to answer any questions on January. All
Don't see any, so go on to February.
Looking at February, again, this is a substantial change when we're looking at items 1, 2, and 3. Skyrizi, Rinvoq, there are now biosimilars that are rolling onto the market. So we are making the move similar to what we did with Humira last year, where we are going to move over into the biosimilar space with these particular class of drugs, and we are no longer going to be covering the name brand. Obviously, the appeal process still exists that if we need to do that, they can still have access to that, but they will not be on our formulary moving forward.
Hey, Grant, if we could just stop there for a second. Any feedback on the switch on the biosimilars, like with Humira, from covered individuals or Are folks taking advantage of an appeal process, or is the biosimilars just working fine with no issues?
The biosimilars, by and large, and when I say that, probably greater than 90% are working just fine, and we have not really seen any speed bumps or hit any like real pushback when it comes to these switches. I do think there is that kind of outliers that remaining that we would still go through the appeal process and still, when the evidence supports it, we continue to approve it.
So there could be rare cases where
Right.
the efficacy is not what it is with the.
For whatever reason, right.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, all good. Looking at the next one, this is just the generic that for this particular therapy that we're adding, switching to. We're taking that tier 3 that is the non-preferred brand name tier. So we're keeping that, but we're just upping that tier for the brand because the generic exists. Looking at item 5, this one is an interesting one. So the Department of Defense actually developed this for chemical warfare, and it has actually been proven quite effective on seizures. The boxing and the distribution of it is still not at a place that it is like really commercially available, but the efficacy of this one really is quite remarkable. So we are adding it on in preparation for it to start rolling out into the commercial market. But that one was kind of a fun one to review. Looking at the next 1, 2, 3, 4, there is no superior efficacy to these, so we will keep them at not covered at this point. Switching to the second page, item 10. We're adding this on at tier 2. Our contracting does allow for 2 preferred products, so we are adding this one on just to give more options in this space to Creon, which is what we currently cover. If you look at items 11 through 16, this is just a decrease in the tier as we have seen the lower cost generic utilization increasing. Items 17 and 18, we are, and this is all related to going through 24. So looking at the gels and the creams, we're just kind of switching the class for the acne medications and getting the lower cost net spend on our formulary and removing the higher costs at this point. Then you'll go to item 25. We are going to move that to not cover because lower cost alternatives are available, and we have those on our formulary already. I'll pause there and answer any questions on those.
Any questions on the February pharmacy formulary recommendations? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve December, January, and February pharmacy formula recommendations. Motions or second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The pharmacy formula recommendations are approved. Going to medical.
All right. So looking at the February medical, excuse me, and always my disclaimer on this one, these are drugs that are administered in a clinical setting, so that they are the higher spend, and there is a standard health advantage protocol around them. Then we layer in EBRX around the review for authorization on these. So looking at items 1 through 6, but please, we're going to skip over 5. Sorry, just the way they kind of organized. I'll come back to 5. But items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, we're still having the biosimilar on our formulary. These are new biosimilars, but have not kind of come in at the cost that we were looking at. So we are going to leave those off at this point. If you look at item 5, Keytruda, as we continue to see evolutions with this particular drug. This one, rather than being administered in an IV, there's actually now a subcutaneous injection that you can use. So you're taking this infusion that would be about 30 minutes down to about a 2-minute shot that these patients would have. So we are adding that one on formulary with no EBRX restrictions. You'll see items 7, 8, and 9. Again, the 7 is the Skyrizi. We're just matching the medical to the pharmacy. And then we are looking at the biosimilars in the next 2. And as more market availability comes, we'll re-review those, but we're going to leave those excluded at this point. Items 10 and 11. 10 is a biosimilar that we're adding on. 11, there are lower cost alternatives that we continue to cover, so we'll leave that one excluded, and that will be the end of the list.
All right, thank you, Grant. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve the medical drug recommendations.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The recommendations are approved. And now we'll turn to the SKIP program.
Okay, shifting hats. Now we'll go over to the Office of Property Risk, and the rules that you have before you, these are making permanent the emergency rules that you have already reviewed. We did coordinate the drafting of these rules with rules that are already in place with the Public School Facility Maintenance Repair Program. These rules were reviewed by the Department of Education, and we worked with them on the drafting. Mitchell Williams also aided in the drafting of these rules. This is in response, again, to Act 560 and I believe 761 of the past general session that just put in place the captive insurance program. Be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, take a motion to approve both proposed rules. Motion, is there a second? There's a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The rules are approved. And their next stop, I guess, will be at ALC.
Yes, so we did not meet the deadline for the February ALC, but they will be in the March ALC meetings.
All right. I just would note for the board that there's a copy of the investment policy from the Treasurer's Office that's in there, including the money management policy as well. That's just for your benefit. There's no action required on that. There's nothing changing this meeting on that. Any other business to come before the board? Seeing none, hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you for your attendance.
Jimmy Ritchie
is now exiting.